The restaurant was the kind of place where every detail mattered. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen constellations, and the polished marble floors reflected the soft golden glow of ambient lights. Waiters moved with precision, gliding between tables, balancing silver trays laden with glasses of sparkling wine. Outside, the city thrummed with life, but inside, time seemed to slow, giving the impression that nothing trivial could disturb the delicate balance of wealth and power that permeated the air. At one of the corner tables, away from prying eyes but perfectly positioned for an elegant view of the entire room, sat the billionaire. He was a man whose reputation preceded him, a master negotiator, a deal-maker whose influence could sway markets, topple corporations, and, according to rumors, shift political landscapes. His tailored suit clung to him with the precision of a sculptor's finishing touch. His expression, usually unreadable, held a flicker of curiosity as he studied the documents laid out before him on the polished mahogany table. The contract was deceptively simple. A few paragraphs carefully drafted with legal precision, promising untold benefits to the signer. To the casual observer, it seemed harmless, almost mundane. But anyone who knew the billionaire, and everyone in the room did, understood that on his desk, even the smallest piece of paper could hold the weight of fortunes, influence, or ruin. As he prepared to reach for the pen, the soft sound of heels approaching caught his attention. The waitress had been serving the table with a practiced smile, a model of poise under pressure. But this time something was different. Her movements were hesitant, almost cautious. When she reached the table, she lingered a fraction longer than necessary, her eyes darting to the contract, then back to him. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice, and whispered, "Don't sign that." The words were unexpected. The billionaire's hand froze midair, pen hovering over the page. A ripple of curiosity passed through the room. Who was she to intervene? A waitress? Someone he had never spoken to beyond polite pleasantries, now daring to advise him on a multi-million-dollar decision? He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. And why not? His voice was calm, but there was an edge, a quiet authority that reminded everyone present that he was a man not accustomed to being challenged. The waitress swallowed hard, fighting the tremor in her voice. "Because once you do," she continued, glancing nervously at the surrounding patrons, "you'll lose everything, and you won't even know it until it's too late." The room seemed to pause. Waiters froze mid-step, glasses caught halfway to lips, and even a nearby couple momentarily stopped their conversation, sensing the tension. Her words weren't just a warning. They were a declaration that something far more serious was at play than anyone could guess. The billionaire's eyes sharpened. He leaned back slightly, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "You think you understand the stakes?" he asked, his voice low but laced with intrigue. "Do you even know what this is?" "I don't need to know the details," she replied, her voice steadier now, her fear transformed into resolve. "I know the outcome. I know the consequences. People are counting on you to make the right choice. Don't sign it." A hush fell over the restaurant. Other diners shifted in their seats, sensing the invisible tension surrounding the table. Some dared to steal glances, curious about the exchange unfolding between a billionaire and someone they considered ordinary. The billionaire tapped the edge of the contract lightly with his finger, the sound crisp and deliberate. He studied the fine print with a piercing gaze, each line revealing the familiar, almost seductive promise of power, wealth, and control. And yet there was a subtle, almost imperceptible sense that something was amiss, something hidden between the lines that even his experienced eyes hadn't immediately recognized. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally, leaning forward, resting his forearms on the table. There was a faint spark in his eyes, part curiosity, part challenge. "Because if you sign it, you won't just risk yourself," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft background music. "You'll risk everyone who trusts you. You'll be making a decision that looks perfect on paper. But in reality, it's a trap designed to take everything you've built and twist it against you." The billionaire paused, letting her words sink in. He had faced betrayal before, had been challenged by rivals, had navigated treacherous waters of business and politics. But the fear in her voice was different. It was not fear for herself, it was fear for him. And that was unusual, rare, almost unheard of. His hand hovered above the pen. The golden tip gleamed under the restaurant lights, reflecting 1,000 possibilities. He could sign it. He could dismiss her warning as the overcautious ramblings of someone unimportant, or he could pause, consider, and rethink. The waitress took a small step back, her hands nervously clasped in front of her. "Please," she said softly, "don't sign it. Not yet. Wait. Think. Everything depends on your next move." For the first time in a long while, the billionaire felt a strange sensation, a flicker of doubt. Not fear, not weakness, but a sudden awareness that even he, with all his experience and wealth, could be blindsided. The pen hovered, trembling slightly in his hand. The world outside continued unaware. People walked on the streets, cars honked, and life went on. But inside that restaurant, in that precise moment, everything was on the line. One wrong move and everything could collapse. One right move and he could avert disaster, but only if he listened. He exhaled slowly, his mind racing through possibilities, calculations, and consequences. Everyone expected him to sign, as he always did, boldly, without hesitation, confident in his own judgment. But this time something was different. Something in her eyes, in the tremor of her voice, in the conviction behind her words made him pause. The world seemed to hold its breath. The pen hovered over the paper, suspended between decision and fate. The billionaire, the master of calculated risks, now faced an unknown variable, a warning he could not ignore. And that was when the moment became electric. Every eye in the restaurant was fixed on him, every mind silently asking the same question. What would he do next? The room remained tense, a charged silence hovering like static in the air. The billionaire's hand still hovered above the pen, caught between instinct and intuition. Every muscle in his body, honed over years of high-stakes negotiations, screamed for action. Sign, seal the deal, move forward. But now that instinct wavered. He felt the weight of the waitress's warning pressing against him. Not just words, but a force he could not ignore. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. A faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, a rare glimpse of amusement breaking through the tension. "You've got my attention," he said, voice low but steady, eyes locked on hers. "Go on. Tell me exactly why I shouldn't sign." The waitress swallowed, glancing briefly around the restaurant as if making sure no one else could hear. "This isn't just another contract," she said. "It's a trap. You think it gives you control, but in reality it hands power to people who want to see you fail. Once you sign it, there's no going back. Every asset you've built, every deal you've made, they can be used against you. And the worst part? You won't even see it coming." The billionaire's brow furrowed. He had anticipated rivals, lawyers, even spies, but this was different. This was an insider warning, a whisper of danger from someone with no apparent motive, no stake in the game, yet somehow aware of the consequences. He tapped the table lightly, considering her words. "And you're sure of this?" he asked. His tone carried that familiar edge of authority, the tone that had forced CEOs and politicians to bend to his will. "Because if I'm wrong, I risk losing the opportunity of a lifetime. But if you're right..." He let the words hang in the air. The waitress nodded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I've seen it happen before. I've seen good people make the same mistake, thinking they were in control only to lose everything." "Don't be one of them." Gasps rippled across the room. Patrons shifted uneasily in their seats. Whispers rose among the waitstaff. Everyone felt it, the tension of a high-stakes moment about to explode, yet unlike anything they had ever witnessed. The billionaire, a man used to commanding rooms, suddenly seemed human, vulnerable, contemplative. Then, with a deliberate motion that stunned everyone, he set the pen down. Not lightly, with authority. It clicked against the polished wood, signaling a decision, a choice. The act itself seemed to reverberate across the restaurant. "I'm not signing this," he declared, his voice calm but carrying the weight of finality. The room went silent. For a heartbeat, it seemed as if the world itself had stopped. The rivals who had anticipated his signature, hidden observers who had been watching for any sign of weakness, looked visibly shaken. Their plans, their calculations, their expectations, all had been thrown into chaos by a single, deliberate refusal. The billionaire stood, straightening his jacket, exuding the confidence that had always defined him, but now tempered with an unusual humility. He turned to the waitress. "You just saved me from myself," he said, his tone soft but sincere. I don't know who you are beyond this moment, but I owe you my gratitude. The waitress's eyes widened, her hands trembling slightly. She had only wanted to protect him from the consequences of a single decision, but she hadn't expected recognition. She simply nodded, murmuring, "Just be careful. Some people will not forgive this." He gave a knowing smile. "I don't need forgiveness. I need to survive and thrive. And sometimes surviving means listening when others speak the truth, even when it's inconvenient." The tension slowly lifted. Waiters resumed their movements, glasses were replaced on trays, and the soft hum of conversation cautiously returned. But the energy in the room had shifted. Where there had been anticipation of a dramatic signing, there was now a subtle reverence. Everyone had witnessed a rare moment, a billionaire, a man of immense power, choosing wisdom over impulse. As he gathered his belongings and prepared to leave, he paused near the waitress once more. "Remember this," he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Even the most powerful people need someone brave enough to tell them the truth. You did that today?" She nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and awe. It wasn't every day that an ordinary person's courage could alter the course of history, or at least, the course of one man's empire. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, indifferent to the drama that had just unfolded in a quiet corner of its wealthiest district. But inside, a story had been written, a story of courage, insight, and the power of speaking up. For the billionaire, this day would be remembered as the one where he was reminded that power without wisdom is dangerous, and that even the most careful calculations can be undone by unseen forces. For the waitress, it would be a story of bravery, a moment when she had dared to intervene, knowing the risks but trusting her instincts. And for everyone else in that restaurant, it was a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary moments happen quietly, in whispered warnings, in choices that seem small but carry unimaginable consequences. In the end, the billionaire walked away without signing the contract. He had averted a disaster he didn't fully understand, but his instinct told him he had made the right choice. And the world, though oblivious to this particular act of courage, would continue to be shaped by moments like these, where ordinary people stepped forward to speak truth to power. Some stories don't end with fireworks or headlines. Some end quietly in the wisdom of a pause, the bravery of a whisper, and the shocking, undeniable power of choosing to listen. The contract remained on the table, unsigned, a silent testament to a decision that could change everything.